This episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Blue Bridge Games. For the games and gifts you won't find anywhere else, head to Grand Rapids, Michigan's friendliest local game store, Blue Bridge Games. Blue Bridge Games carries an extensive line of board games, card games, role-playing tabletop games, Magic the Gathering, and more. Stop into their storefront on East Fulton or shop with them online at bluebridgegames.com. This episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Golden Con. Thank you for being a fan. April 22nd through 24th, 2022. Picture it. Chicago, April 2022. Friends, pals, and confidants, get ready to laugh your way through a first-of-its-kind weekend-long classic TV comedy fan gathering. Golden Con, Thank You for Being a Fan, will take place from April 22nd to April 24th in Chicago's historically LGBTQ+ North Allsted neighborhood. Fans and superfans are gathering together for a fun-filled weekend to celebrate TV's most revered comedy with laughter and friendship, and perhaps some cheesecake. Events for the fan convention include a greatest gift vendors market, the live parody shows from Hell in a Handbag Theater Company. Find them on the web at www.handbagproductions.org. The Chicago You've Got Style Costume Parade, specially themed nightlife events, and a weekend-long battle to grab that trivia dough. Additional events, performers, and special guest appearances will be announced in the months and weeks leading up to the convention. Tickets go on sale soon. Visit thankyouforbeingafan.com for details or join the Facebook group. See you at the con!
You say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy. You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night. Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because, picture it, Grand Rapids, 2015. We made a blog into a podcast and I've been telling bad jokes about it ever since. We hope you enjoy them. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays. And as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panels and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Amazon Music, basically wherever you get your podcasts, to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Stranger Things, iZombie, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, Mr. Robot, Charmed, Riverdale, Altered Carbon, The Orville, Outlander, Westworld, Fuller House, Schitt's Creek, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and The Crown. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as MASH, Dollhouse, Breaking Bad, Revenge, and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Plus new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Doctor Who, The 100, Supernatural, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, This Is Us. The Good Doctor Catching Up series will discuss Season 4. The DCTU series panel will reflect upon Season 4 of Black Lightning, and the Star Trek 50+ series will talk Season 1 of Deep Space Nine. We'll be launching new panels covering Big Little Lies, Call the Midwife, The Animaniacs, Killing Eve, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, American Gods, Grey's Anatomy, Cobra Kai, Peaky Blinders, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, A Discovery of Witches, and The Hauntings of Hill House and Bly Manor. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory. We'll dive deep into the fantasy world of the magicians. We'll navigate the witty political satire of Parks and Recreation. We'll become psychos for Psych. We'll go where everybody knows your name with Cheers. We hope you'll be listening when we talk about Frasier. And we'll know that's what she said when we talk about The Office, both from the UK and the USA. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in whatever we're calling these times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, YouTube channel, Apple iTunes channel, Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of the outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, not in the form of a St. Olaf story, though. Well, maybe just one. Today's panel is looking back at an American situation comedy that aired on NBC for 7 seasons from 1985 to 1992. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully, like Sophia, who was ready to hide the bodies with the best of them at age 80 or so. Or don't hold up as well, like Blanche, who denies her real age at every opportunity. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for some time, and that show is a particular favorite of the panel today, The Golden Girls. By way of premise, The Golden Girls starred Bea Arthur, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty as 4 older women who share friendship and a home in Miami, Florida. The owner of the house is a widow named Blanche Devereaux, played by McClanahan, who is joined by fellow widow Rose Nyland, played by White, and divorcee Dorothy Zbornak, played by Arthur, after they both responded to an ad on the bulletin board at a local grocery store a year before the start of the series. In the pilot episode, the 3 are joined by Dorothy's 80-year-old widowed mother, Sophia Petrillo, played by Getty, after the retirement home where she has been living has burned down. The Golden Girls received critical acclaim throughout most of its run and won several awards, including the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Comedy Series twice. It also won 3 Golden Globe Awards for Best Television Series, Musical, or Comedy, and each of the 4 stars received an Emmy Award, making it one of only 4 sitcoms in the awards history to achieve this. The series also ranked among the Nielsen Ratings Top 10 for 6 of its 7 seasons. The series also resulted in 3 spin-offs, The Golden Palace, Empty Nest, and Nurses, which was a spin-off from Empty Nest. The comedy also appears on several best-of lists tracked by CPU. In 2013, TV Guide ranked The Golden Girls number 54 on its list of the 60 best series of all time. In 2014, the Writers Guild of America placed the sitcom at number 69 in their list of the 101 best-written TV series of all time. In 2015, the show was ranked number 48 on the Hollywood Reporter's 100 Favorite TV Shows list, and in 2016, Rolling Stone ranked it number 98 on its 100 Greatest TV Shows of All Time list. The series continues to attract new fans in the 21st century and is considered an example of a sitcom that has aged very well, no pun intended. The Golden Girls was popularly requested by CPU for discussion by some of our resident Couch Potatoes and Couch Potatoes adjacent as a personal favorite of all of them, and indeed of the chief couch potato, that's me, who moderates today. To wit, 4 familiar CPU voices, a brand new voice, and your very involved moderator were eager to convene around the water cooler or around the kitchen table and a plate of cheesecake to reminisce about the Golden Girls in one of our Looking Back episodes, during which we'll talk about the finer and less fine points of the series in general. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire series and may discuss sensitive plot points, jokes, sight gags, and other things best enjoyed on a first watch. So for those of you who have not watched The Golden Girls, listen at your own risk, and also where have you been, as there may be major sitcom-y type spoilers. At this time, I'd like to introduce the panel. Most of them know how this works. Listener, if you're one of our frequent listeners, you know how this works, but I'm going to remind them and remind you. I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves by their first name, just their first name, not your whole life story. Don't tell us where you came, just your first name, and then you get to tell us how you came to watch The Golden Girls. What made you start watching? How'd you find out about it? What kept you watching? This will be a very interesting question, because I'm going to hint that I am the oldest, by a hair, but the oldest on this panel. And then you get to rate your interest in the show, and because we're looking back at this series, you get to provide 2 answers. How you felt when you first started watching it at the beginning, and how you felt at the end, and you can tell us what that end means, and it's along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. And of course, this is a sitcom with characters, so I do impressions. I'm not going to tell you they're good ones, but I will do the impressions. Panel, are you ready for this hilarity to ensue?
Yeah.
All right, so how would you rate your interest in the Golden Girls at the beginning and the end along this very short but very poignant character question? Would you say you loved it? It's as wise as any story you can remember from your days living in St. Olaf. You watched every single episode and will watch it again and again, no matter how many members in your household might grow sick of it and your stories, like Rosen Island. You appreciate the complex issues and subtle nuances explored in this comedy about 4 senior women coexisting in the late 20th century, and you feel the show's commentary and comedy really hold up, especially those sarcastic zingers, expert shade, and withering side-eyes, like by Dorothy's Bornak. Picture it, Sicily, 1922. A bunch of old broads kicking around Miami, throwing shade and otherwise celebrating friendship? Well, at your age, it's better than a kick in your eye, provided you've properly hidden the bodies, like Sophia Petrillo. Or trash. You'd rather have a bad date called from your ample little black book than watch another episode of this decidedly vile, not-so-humorous comedy, though the Blanche character will always remain a bright spot in an otherwise dark and despairing attempt at wit, in your humble opinion, and you know Big Daddy would agree, like Blanche Devereaux. Who would like to start?
I can go first. Oh, Eddie can too.
No,
Just one of you go. Whoever wants to.
Okay, I'm Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hi. I'm going to have to say that at the beginning of my watching of the show, which, for context, I was 2 months old when this show started airing.
Thanks, Nick.
But for as long as I can remember, I remember watching the Golden Girls. Whether I was catching some of it on primetime when it was first airing as I got older, but I'm sure most of my watching was Nick at Night. And at the beginning, I would say I was a Rose for a couple of reasons, but mainly as a kid, that was just the funniest stuff. It wasn't until I started getting older and appreciating it more where I became, I'll say, I'm more of a Dorothy towards the end because I understood more of the nuance of Dorothy's sarcastic comments or actually understanding some of them when it relates to Blanche, because as a 5 to 10-year-old, didn't quite get all of those. I would say overall I'm a Dorothy now because this show is just clever, it's funny, it's well written, and it holds up for so many reasons I didn't even realize as a kid, which we'll get into in our main discussion.
Sounds good. Welcome back, Nick. Nick, you are our second most involved panelist still. That is your ranking. Tell us, Nick, what are some of your other panels that you've been on?
MASH, Futurama, Star Trek, X-Files, American Horror Story, Arrested Development, more.
To name a few. Yeah, all right. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks.
My name is Eddie.
Hi,
Hello,
Eddie.
Friends. I would like to say that I'm staying true to the show, and I'm actually in Florida, just so the listeners know. So when the show first started, I was not born, so everybody knows.
Thanks for your help. Thanks for playing.
Makes me feel old.
I actually started watching the show really young, though, because I don't remember this, but my mom told me that I called it the Grandma Show. So I actually really fell in love with the show. I would laugh. So I would say when the show started, I was definitely a Rose. It was funny. I mean, who doesn't want 4 grandmothers that you get to like hang out with and are just making you laugh? As I got older and as I want to say I was in college and I watched the Golden Girls to like shut my brain off from studying. I started from the beginning and actually watched the whole series. I would say that I'm definitely, when the show ended, I'm a Dorothy, because not only did, like Nick said, I understand a lot of the stuff, I think this show is definitely way before its years. The show has a lot of context that they tackle that in the early 90s, late 80s was kind of morbid for some, and I'm sure we'll get into that in our discussion.
All right. Welcome back, Eddie. Eddie, you're one of our most frequent panelists as well. Tell us some of the panels you have been on or are on.
Oh, girl. Okay, I have been on How to Get Away with Murder, American Horror Story, Good Doctor. I have written for How to Get Away with Murder. I've written a couple to show things. I'm trying to think. Why do I always go blank? Yeah, there we go. I can't ever think when I do this.
All right.
Oh, Once Upon a Time. Yeah, how did I forget Once Upon a Time? That was like one of the OGs.
I know. I don't know. But that's just to name a few as well. Welcome back, Eddie.
Thank you.
So I am Richard, and this is my very first panel that I've been on, so thanks for having me.
Hi, Richard. This is your very first panel you've been on, and we're so happy to have you.
Yay! This is the perfect one for me. So I believe I'm the second oldest by a hair, and so I was 7 when the show aired, and I distinctly remember the very first time I saw it. It probably was season 2. I probably was around 8, and it was at my grandma's house, and she was watching. I was spending the night. And I remember, this sounds crazy, but I remember being so drawn in by the theme song that I just, seriously, and even still to this day, it gives me the warm fuzzies. I'm sure it does all of you. But after that, I started watching it regularly, in prime time with my family. And so it wasn't obviously, like everyone's saying, until later that I was getting all the jokes, obviously. I probably had to be at least in the double digits. But then I revisited it, as an adult on Nick at Night, what we were saying. And at that point, I would say I was probably a Rose, just because, not only did I watch it all the time, but I was actually, I'm not stupid, but I'm gullible, and I'm not always, pop culture is not my strong suit. So a lot of things can go over my head. And then I haven't finished watching it because I will always watch that show. But, towards the end, or how I am now, I would definitely say I'm a Dorothy. I'm sometimes a little more serious than my own that I need to be. But I love the fact that she can be super sarcastic, and I love to do that, at least with the people that I'm close to. So don't get offended.
We won't, and they won't. They're used to our spicy talk on this podcast. So welcome to Couch Potatoes Unite, Richard.
Thank you.
And because Richard has a dynamic, I think there's a very obvious next choice of who to go.
Is it me?
It's you!
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi. I guess everyone's giving away their age. I think I was like a year old when the show premiered, so
Thanks.
There you go.
There you go.
You're welcome. So I think, kind of like Nick said, I probably saw the majority of it like on Nick at Night, and then until the later years, I do remember watching it with family as well. And very similar to what Nick said, I feel like when I was younger, I identify much more with Rose. And also because, based on your description, I have watched it a gajillion times and will always watch it over and over and over again. It's just one of those well-written shows. But I am, in real life, more like Dorothy. And I think those of you who know me really well know that. So I can be snarky and give really good side eyes. So I really feel the vibe of Miss Dorothy Spornak.
Great. Welcome back to the podcast, Jordan. Jordan, you've been on another panel that we've done. What panel have you been on?
I did the Schitt's Creek panel.
You did. And the reason why we say dynamic is because when there are people who are closely affiliated on the panel, they might be more prone to have inside jokes or certain kinds of discussion fights. So, who is your dynamic on this panel?
Could be.
We'll see.
But you're supposed to explain it. You have to explain it to the listener that you're married to.
That we're married? I forgot we were recording when we saw hi. So we're in the same room.
Yes.
And we've been together for a really long time.
Yes.
So there may be
there might be some spiciness.
Just maybe.
Just maybe.
I am not spicy. How dare you?
I think the listener can see right through that. So. Welcome back to the podcast, Jordan.
Thanks, Kylie.
I'm Leslie. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Leslie.
I think I was around 2 when Golden Girls started.
Thanks.
And so, my first memory of the Golden Girls is when one day I was very, very sick, and I really did not feel good, and just was ill, and went to the ER with my mom, and The only thing I remember thinking is, like, I want to get done with this and go back home so we can watch the Golden Girls. And, like, just thinking that would make me feel better. Like, I just want to go watch this comforting show that will make me feel better. But as I got older, I started watching it in college, and then just randomly one Sunday I caught it on TV Land on cable, and they were doing marathon, and I think I sat there for a couple hours just watching episodes, like, oh, I forgot how awesome this show is, and I've been obsessed ever since. So yeah, I'm definitely very similar to the panelists. I think I started as a Rose. Like, I love the show. I could watch it. I don't care how many times I've seen the episodes. I'll watch them over and over again. But like we've talked about, when I was little, I didn't really get a lot of the nuance and the sarcasm. But as I get older, and some of the jokes, they still make me laugh, and it just adds so much more. So yeah, I think I'm definitely a bit more of a Dorothy now. In my general life, probably more of a Rose, to be honest, but
I second that opinion. That's true.
Yeah.
Welcome to the panel, Leslie. Leslie,
Thank
you've been
you.
on another panel. What panel have you been on?
I did Fuller House, which was super fun, and I rode that all the way through, so I was super proud that I kept up with it to the end, and yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And of course, my name is Kylie, and I am both moderating and participating on this panel today, as is often the case. Why am I moderating this? Because this is one of my all-time favorite shows. And you know, when I say that, that's like, I watch a lot of TV, so that's like a big deal. I started watching the Golden Girls like Richard, who I'm a hair older than. I started watching it with my grandmother, actually. She would watch the show and frequently babysat me and my brother and maybe my younger siblings, although not so much when they got to be born and around. But I do remember being at her house on Saturday nights, and she would turn this on and I would watch it with her, and that became kind of a comforting thing, so that I would continue to watch it as the seasons progress, and as I got older, I just watched the Golden Girls. It was one of the appointment TV shows that I watched as a kid, and have watched it in reruns ever since. Have picked it up somewhere along the line. Lifetime had it for a while. Nick at Night had it for a while. It's made its rounds in syndication, so I've seen pieces and parts of the series the whole way through, but then of course rewatched the whole thing just for this occasion. And when I started the series, I would say that I was also Rose, because I would have been naive and not quite the sarcastic bundle of joy that I am now. And now I would be Dorothy, just like everybody else on this panel, not only because the character description applies to my adulthood and being able to understand all the sassy jokes, but also, like my good friend Jordan, some people might think of me as the real-life Dorothy. I don't know. I think I also have some Sophia aspects, but we'll talk about that when we go. Which is a little sad because I'm not 80 yet, but we'll get there. So we're going to look back at the Golden Girls. So if you've listened to our looking back episodes in the past, you know that this is really just high level, have at it. It's all the memories, all the nostalgia, anything anybody wants to say about the show. There's really no specific rhyme or reason like our water cooler episodes. It's not as deep a dive as our retrospectives. It's just about appreciating the show for what it is. So we're going to start talking about the show in general. Tell me what you loved about it, since clearly the love is very effusive here. Or if you disliked something, tell us that too. Although I'd be interested to know if that even exists here on this panel.
Anybody?
Anybody can go!
I guess all I have to say is that I love how the show stayed true to their form from season to season. And with a lot of shows that you watch, you'll find that they will do something in season 1 to grab your attention. And then in season 2, they're like, well, let's try this. And you're like, this is insane. I don't like this. Then they'll add other seasons, and like in season 3, but I feel like the Golden Girls stayed so consistent. They had a roadmap, they followed it, and they just kept going. And the only thing that changed was who was hating who this season, who was hating who this episode, or who all the girls were hating, or who all the girls were trying to date. Like, it was just the same roadmap, and it worked. It just worked really, really well. And I hate to say it worked, because it still works. My nephew is 12, and he loves this show. I mean, look at the different ages of people that watch the show. So clearly the writing has just worked.
Well, kind of going off what you were saying, Eddie, the hating or whatever, I mean, there's not a lot of shows where it seems that, I'm throwing out a percentage because they're never accurate, but, where 75% of the jokes are insults. It's just like boom, 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 just these constant insults, yet they all love each other and care about each other. But the insults are such pure gold, the way that they're written. It's just hilarious. And they hold up over time. I mean, these types of insults have nothing to do with the time period, the decade, or anything. They just always apply to people. So a lot of times you can put yourself in a situation, like if you were Rose and somebody's saying something like that to you, or Blanche, when she thinks she's so gorgeous and she's constantly being brought back down to earth, that she's a little plump and a lot older than she thinks she is, and all that good stuff. I mean, it's just genius.
Any show that comes to mind, any sitcom that comes to mind, I can't think of another one that has as many one-liners or zingers that are golden. But I'm so funny. No, that are honestly, they're so funny and they still work. They're just so good. And obviously it just comes from, their writing team, but also it comes from their chemistry. Like there's also very, very few sitcoms. I mean, there are a couple, of course, in the high list, but I don't think any now that have that same electricity. That, you can have a good writer, but if they can't deliver those words believably, then it's worth nothing, and that's what I think is what still sells the show now, is like you really just kind of feel like someone put a camera in someone's house, could you believe everything that they're doing and saying, and they just happen to be funny.
This cast sells it. They were all seasoned veterans when they came to this, maybe not Estelle Yeti as much, but B. Arthur, Betty White, and Rue McClanahan, heck, they've had plenty of experience working together prior to this.
Right.
Get into the drama behind the scenes, but they were professionals. They made sure they knew what they were doing, and they took it seriously. And every line, they got everything they could out of every word. And sometimes they didn't need a line. It was the looks, especially B. Arthur.
The look.
And they're just worth watching. And if you have not seen an early episode of a show that doesn't necessarily hold up called Mama's Family, you could get a good sampling of Rue McClanahan as a big old ditz and Betty White as a promiscuous kind of snipey, they basically switched roles in there, and it's a lot. That's
right. And Betty White did the same thing on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, where she was the man crazy sex pot. So she did that twice and then flipped. So it does show the versatility of the actress, because you believe both scenarios. Absolutely. Growing
up, I couldn't picture Betty White playing anything but Rose, and it wasn't until I dove into Mary Tyler Moore and Mama's Family, and then I even watched Maude, which Rue McClanahan was on that with B. Arthur as well, and just to see them playing different characters, even though you can argue Maude and Dorothy have some similarities, but are still very well performed.
Yeah, absolutely. I love totally the chemistry between them all. I think I think the writing also plays to everybody's strength. Nobody can deliver a look like B. Arthur can, and nobody can play the ditzy, naive one like Betty White can. And I love their chemistry, and I love that when you got them all together, that was the magic. That was the whole thing. And the writing was great, but like we've already said, I mean, if you don't have the actors to deliver it, it doesn't work as well. But here it worked perfectly.
So Eddie kind of talked a little bit about how this sitcom followed its roadmap. That was pretty typical of sitcoms of the 70s and 80s. There was a plan for how the episodes were going to go, and then a lot of the episodes would follow that plan. But what's really great about the Golden Girls is that it was never stale, because with each additional season, for example, they would just amp up a lot of the stuff that made it so magical and made it such a funny situation comedy. I mean, in the earlier episodes, you can kind of watch, they have the chemistry instantly and they have the rapport, but the zingers aren't quite as acidic as they get to be later on. And it's not quite, I mean, it definitely builds very much and even more vitriolically in sometimes about how dumb Rose is, or how overweight Blanche is, or how forgetful and senile Sophia is, or how...
Or Dorothy's appearance.
Oh, that's just... your jaw drops that the writers were that cruel. I mean, if you're thinking about... how it feels to be B. Arthur. It's like, these are like really truly at my expense versus characters that you're just playing. Like when it's physical like that, it's like, it makes it funny, but it's also just like jaw dropping. It really kind of puts you into the situation.
And it's also the kind of comedy that I don't think you get to see nowadays anymore, because of the fact that it takes such a very... I mean, what I appreciate about the Golden Girls is that it explores that age of life where you don't care as much about what other people think or say about you. And it's reflected in these 4 characters and how they relate to each other. And I can't imagine a sitcom of the same caliber, not only of talent, but also of writing and just the sassiness that comes out of it being made today, because there's just so much reactivity to certain things in today's landscape, pop culture landscape. Did I say that nicely? I hope I did.
You did.
You did.
I almost interjected and said something that would have totally not been appropriate, so thanks for the perfect word.
That's what I'm here for.
Going on what Eddie said earlier, and then go ahead, because I know we all have an idea of what was groundbreaking about the show, but I think like from the get-go, the one that maybe people don't think of as much, unless maybe you are an older woman, is the fact that they all had so much sexual jokes in there for their age. Blanche was had a very healthy sex life. They all dated, and even though they picked fun at B. Arthur for not dating a lot, there was still a lot of sex talk. And if you're a young person, you don't think of old ladies in that way, like that they would ever do that. So the reality of it is they may be past their prime, but they have the same cravings that young women and men have, and it made it very real and kind of eye-opening.
I think there are several progressive topics of various episodes, but I don't want to be the one to talk about them because I think we have a lot of examples and people with devotion that can talk about them.
I was just going to say, why don't we start with the overall? Even today, it's hard to find a show where the cast is just 4 women. You have to dive into cable, really, for that. And it didn't seem to be a big deal. Again, I started watching this as a kid, so of course I didn't think anything of it. It was funny, so I watched it. And it still seems weird that would be a negative. And I do think the pilot included a 5th character.
It did. They had that random butler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the random
I don't think I've ever seen it.
And then they quickly realized, well, that didn't work. We don't need him.
Yeah, he just disappears. You never see him again.
He's never to be seen or heard from. No, but it's true though. Like just the very fact that it's a female-driven show, and the fact that they're openly and honestly talking about sex in that time frame it was a big deal, because it really hadn't really happened. It had been done before, like we talked about Betty White and Mary Tyler Moore, but it was so jokey. It was just like, ooh, look, you know what I mean? It wasn't, yeah, and more like kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It wasn't really like, here we are sitting around a table actually talking about our desires and our real lives and being a widow and what that means, life after losing your husband and those types of things. So the way that the show was able to do that really truly was groundbreaking. Kylie, you mentioned other things that it did, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk about and just briefly mention. But like the show did cover many topics that were kind of hush-hush at the time. One specifically that I think is done beautifully is the AIDS episode, when Rose gets notified that she potentially was exposed to HIV/AIDS. I don't remember, was that like a blood bank or
blood transfusion?
It was a blood transfusion.
Yeah, transfusion. And I think that episode in particular really stands out. And again, every good show goes back to writing, but what I really love about the way that they handled it was it was done seriously, but in a way that it was such a mirror of society at the time. Because Sophia's reaction to what Rose was going through, Sophia didn't want to share her water glass with Rose, and that's what the culture was at the time. You know, this was in the late 80s, early 90s with, we won't talk all about that and Reagan and all that crap, but that's what society was thinking, like, I can drink from a glass of water and catch it. And so, like, just the very fact that they did that was really huge. And they also did, what was the Rose's or Blanche's daughter did insemination.
Yeah,
that was a big thing they talked
In
about.
vitro.
What was another one they did that was like this big groundbreaking thing? But those two ones really stood out.
Dorothy's friend was a lesbian that went out.
Yes.
That was all that I was trying to think of.
Which was it's crazy because I mean Rose she was blonde and dumb, like she was just one-sided, but it was interesting when she finally caught on how she still respectfully was like, I will be your friend, but not that type of friend. Like, they did it very respectfully.
Yes, they did.
Just to bounce off what you said, Jordan, about the HIV/AIDS episode, what makes it so impactful, I think, is that we're still dealing with issues on HIV/AIDS that they dealt with while the show was on now. And I think anybody who has HIV, who's dealing with it, they can relate to it. In 2021, you can relate to a show that was done in the 80s. And I think that's what speaks volumes to the show, is that it's still talking to people now.
On that same episode, one of the most powerful lines, I think, which is absolutely applicable today, is I believe that Blanche says it to Rose. She says, it's not supposed to happen to people like me. And she says HIV or AIDS is not a punishment for the way people live their lives. And if you look at society now, people still associate it with being promiscuous or having or only, you know, not being a heterosexual thing and just being a gay thing, and look at it like it could be a punishment. I mean, I'm pretty sure that picketers have held signs saying things like that. So, yeah, not much has changed in that regard.
There was a lot of things I could respond to, so I was just kind of thinking through, because those are three very good examples of sort of the taboo topics, if you will, that they discussed, you know, because Blanche's daughter did get artificial insemination because she was single and was tired of waiting around for somebody to give her the child that she wanted. And Blanche really struggled with that because Blanche is from the old South in many ways, which is another piece of the show that I think... Sometimes I wonder about that piece of the show. I wanted to hear what you all thought about it, because she comes from a South that very much worships the antebellum days, and there is stuff. What did you think of, how do you feel about Blanche's character? Do you think that piece of it has aged as well?
I don't know if that piece of it has aged as well, except there are some aspects of it that I guess from where I'm coming from, I could laugh at some of it, but I think it's still recently, like, the Daughters of the Confederacy. Isn't she a part of that? And she's very proud of it.
She starts to be.
Didn't she apply to be part of it?
Yep.
And then she got rejected because they traced her bloodline or something, right?
Yeah.
And
To a
she was
Yankee.
heartbroken.
To a Yankee.
To a Yankee.
Yeah. That's what it was.
I'm a Feldman.
I'm a Feldman, damn it.
I'm a Feldman, damn it.
Yeah, not just a Yankee, a Jewish Yankee.
And I'm not as up on the Golden Palace spinoff, but I know that there is a video that goes around that kind of addresses that. Well, not kind of, it's very blatant. Don Cheadle's character, what the Confederate flag means to him, and he kind of does rethink that. But I haven't seen that episode. I don't know how well all of that is written. But there are a lot of things that the way they wrote it back then, I don't think this writer's room, which is, I'm assuming, a bunch of white guys, might not have handled that one.
There were white women, too. This one did actually have a mixed-gendered writing staff, which I think is what helped, because there were women voices in the writer's room. I actually did watch a good portion of the Golden Palace. I followed. I mean, it was not as good because you take B. Arthur away and it's just episode upon episode of Blanche, Rose, and Sophia, and you're missing kind of some major dynamics.
But Cheech Marin is in it.
Yeah, that didn't add value.
Oh, yeah.
That
he doesn't
didn't
make up for B. Arthur.
No disrespect to Cheech, although if I'm going to show a preference, it would be for Chong. Just saying. But I actually did watch that episode, and I mean, Don Cheadle is such a wonderful actor that it plays very well. The lines that are being said are, it's like 101 stuff. Like, she should have maybe picked up on that by the age of whatever she turned into. But it's very well delivered because it's Rue and it's Don. And Don early in his career, by the way. I mean, this is well before movie star status. So if you do find a way to watch The Golden Palace, I recommend that episode. But I don't necessarily recommend the show. I watched Empty Nest, too, for a good portion of its life. And it was okay, but it wasn't like great. So it wasn't the Golden Girls. Nothing on that show was remotely the Golden Girls. And I did not watch the third one because by that time it was like, okay, gotta put a pin in this one. Let's go back to the OG. So I see I've stumped the room. Good job. Is there anything you didn't like about the Golden Girls? Oh, I also, before you answer that question, Richard, you mentioned the theme song, and I've been wanting to say this for like 15 minutes. It is my favorite theme song of all of TV.
I hands down agree.
I love it the best, and that's like a huge claim, I know, but it is the best song for the TV.
But and even beyond the theme song itself, when it goes to a commercial and then it comes back and there's that little like bumper music or whatever, it still feels good, doesn't it? It still feels good and warm and fuzzy. And obviously most of the shows in the 80s had that, but it was so well done. It's the catchiest.
Yeah, and shows nowadays don't have theme songs.
No,
so I miss that.
The theme songs are bumpers now, so they don't have bumpers when they.
This is a theme song I will randomly sing around the house just because. And it is warm and fuzzy because it thanks you for being a friend. Mm-hmm. Nick, go.
I was in a gay bar in Chicago, Sidetrack, however many years ago, and it was Musical Mondays. Randomly, they're normally playing videos, live Broadway shows, whatever. They randomly put up the Golden Girls theme song and by itself, and the entire bar sings along. It's just like so beloved. I was like, oh my God, I love the DJ for this. Or
I love that.
VJ.
I was just going to say one of the things this is not a dislike for the show, but this show was the perfect show for channel surfing and to stumble on. And it would just feel great to just, I'm going to watch this now. It's harder for me to seek it out on a streaming or actively decide I'm going to go to the Golden Girls just in our streaming nature. But
nope, not me. If I need comfort TV of the comedic type, it is either Friends or the Golden Girls. Boom. Those are them.
Seinfeld or Golden Girls for me, for sure. Yeah. I don't necessarily have a dislike for the show. I guess if we're talking about like episodes, like dislikes of episodes, I don't know. I always got annoyed when it was the clip show.
Yes,
it's kind of lazy. Yeah. And there's that joke that it's like Golden Girls clip show, aka the week B. Arthur said "F you" and not want to work or whatever. Like, it was just like, how lazy can we be? Let's do like a little premise. We'll sit around and say, "Remember that time," and then the whole show is clips. Those kind of annoyed me.
They always said, "Remember that time," and they were always eating.
Right. With the one missing chair, the classic, sit around the table with the one missing chair.
They weren't doing handheld cameras back then. They were doing setup cameras. Nick, go. I know you want to talk.
I just think it's funny to do a clip show where 50% of the cast, their shtick is telling a story. So it's like, remember that time you told us that St. Olaf story? Remember that time you told us about Sicily? It's too much. It's clip show inception.
Speaking of those things, my favorite is Picture It, Sicily, 1920, whatever. Yep. And I love it when she says, the story doesn't have to make sense. It's just the way I tell it.
I'm old. I'm allowed to be colorful.
That's right.
That's right.
I could tell you the first joke that I remember I did not get the first time, but the first time I got it, I was still pretty young when I got it, but I remember when somebody is making a delivery for Blanche, but Dorothy answers the door, and he says, "I have a delivery for Blanche Deverox," and she goes, "Oh no, her name is only pronounced that way in Limerick." Like, nothing to me the first time.
Right.
Of course, it's B. Arthur who's just casually signing. She's not even looking at the person. Like, it's just perfect.
There's so many great lines.
And that was a primetime joke, I guess.
They were primetime. You get away with a lot more back in the 80s.
Especially when it's a sweet old lady.
B. Arthur, is that the sweet old lady?
I was going to say, I don't know if I described B. Arthur as a sweet old lady, but...
She would not have described herself that way.
Kylie, not to steal your job, but I'm assuming that, are we going to talk about, like, favorite episodes? I know it's really hard to narrow them down, but...
Go, you talk about whatever you want. We're looking back. So what are some of your favorite episodes, Richard?
Definitely one of my favorite episodes, and this isn't even about the humor, even though it's packed with humor. One of my favorite episodes is when Dorothy kind of infiltrates the bar that Blanche frequents and gets all the attention for singing. Not only is there a ton of humor in there when Blanche tries to compete with her and try it herself, it's a hilarious scene, but I mean, B. Arthur's song, What'll I Do, is so mesmerizing. Even in that gruff voice, she just has this magnetic quality. So when they talk about it in the show, you know, you positively glow, you light up a room. But she's literally doing that to all of the TV viewers at the same time. So that's a really favorite, memorable episode of mine. I mean, obviously I have more, but I think that's one of the ones that stands out in probably my top 5.
All 4 of the women did have theatrical backgrounds before they got into TV, some more than others. Actually, Estelle Getty had quite an extensive theatrical background, whereas, you know, Betty White had way more television time than the others, but you can really see that in some of these stylized episodes. One of my favorite episodes, well, I'll say one of my favorite moments in an episode, because I don't even know if I could pick out a top 5, but is when they're trying to write the theme song for Miami.
Yes!
And
that's a great one.
It's so much fun, and it's B. Arthur and Betty White playing, you know, she's playing the piano. We hinted at the drama. I feel like we should talk about it a little bit, because a lot of the really funny insults go between Dorothy and Rose, who in real life, at least from one side, B was not so much a fan of Betty. Betty would tell it that she was fine with B and it's okay, but that was sort of the business. B did not like Betty White very much, but was very professional. They did their thing, but I think sometimes it played out in both the positive chemistry and the insults that they wrote for them. So I think they dug in sometimes when they were really flying back and forth. But the Miami one sticks out because of the singing and they're just doing that performance. And then there's other piece where they're dancing. There's a choreographed dance, and they've cleared the living room and they're tap dancing. Yes.
When Dorothy's in the hospital, right? Wasn't she supposed to be in the number?
Yeah.
And then they're doing the tap solo, and then they're tapping, they go, Dorothy! And there's no one there. She goes, God, I never realized Dorothy's solo was so long.
And then Blanche goes, go, Dorothy, go!
Go, Dorothy, go! One of my, if it's like a musical moment, I think something so iconic is when Sophia and Dorothy enter is it Shady Pines beauty pageant? Or it's a beauty pageant, mother-daughter beauty pageant.
And then they come out as Cher.
Sonny and Cher. And the
look
that Rose looks at, the way she looks at them is so funny. But the best part of the entire thing is, babe, B's deep, I got you, babe. It is so, and flicking her hair, and it's so funny. So good.
Oh my gosh, I love that episode so much. I think some of my favorite moments, I would say, because like you, Kylie, I don't know if I could pick like just one specific, but I love the episode where they came home from the grocery store and they were fighting, and then they sit down and Rose is talking about the herring circus, and you can tell that Rue and B are trying like so hard to keep it together just as actors. Like you can tell they're just like falling apart, and they have a couple moments like that, and every time I watch that scene, I just lose it, because Betty White is just being so professional, and she's sitting there and she's just being Rose and telling this ridiculous story, and B and Rue are just sitting there, and you can tell that they probably had to shoot it like 4 or 5 times because they can't get through it because they keep breaking up, and it's just such a testament, I think, to their chemistry and Betty White's delivery and the fact that she could kind of, I don't want to say hold it together, but like she could stay in that character and not break character. And when you see those little moments where they do it, it's just,
Betty White's total commitment when she's really digging into one of those St. Olaf stories and she's delivering the fake Swedish words like the fear for Nurgadurgen or whatever she said. You know? And she does it with a completely serious and committed face, not in just, you know, in that very specific delivery. That would have been the most amazing set to be on, to watch
know, right?
them.
Oh my goodness.
I feel bad saying this, but I don't, because it's my favorite episode. It's not exactly funny, but it's one of the most touching episodes that I watched because I was younger when I watched it. It's the episode where Blanche's brother comes to visit. He's gay, and he tells her that they're getting married, and she freaks out, and Blanche does, and she doesn't understand it. And when Sophia kind of brings her down to earth and says, well, he loves him, that means they should be married. I just came out of the closet, actually. I was out of the closet for almost 2 years. And the biggest thing that my family said to me is, you'll never be able to get married. You'll never be able to get married. You'll never be able to get married. When I watched that episode, I remember bawling my eyes out going, Sophia said I could get married. So it's one of the most memorable episodes. I've watched that episode multiple times. Yeah, but there are so many comedy episodes in the series that I couldn't even pick one. But I also love when they do the murder mystery.
Yes! That's a great episode.
That's a great one.
That's also probably one of my favorite episodes, but definitely the gay marriage one will always be my favorite.
You know what's so funny about that, Eddie, is when Kylie asked anything you don't like about the show. I love that episode for how it's written and the message it delivers. But I would say there's not an episode or something that I don't like about it, but I hate the actor who plays her brother. I can't stand the way he talks. I can't stand the way he talks. I can't stand his voice. I can't stand his face. I'm sorry, but like I wish it was a different actor playing that part. That's all I have to say.
Well, you just said a mouthful.
Well, hopefully he's not listening.
I mean, if you are you still alive? Tweet at us at CP Podcast.
The show's not that old.
But I don't mean to be... Yeah, he was not young, and 3 out of 4 of our beloved Goldens are not alive, so it's the statistics. What's happening?
I just literally got a text.
And that's your text
ringtone? Okay, you win.
What hashtag synchronicity? Jeez.
You know what one of my other favorite moments is when they all fake the high school reunion.
Yeah.
And they all pretend they went to the high school. And Sophia is Mrs. Gonzalez, the former Spanish teacher. And then Rose is like, here you go, Dorothy. And then she puts hers on. It's Kim Fong Toy.
Yes.
That's where she has her quote-unquote heart attack. And B's lines, you see what you've done? You upset Kim Fong Toy.
And someone says, you look a little different. And she goes, different on outside, same on inside. Oh my God.
That's so funny.
I'm so good.
There are so many good episodes that there's like 20 that want to come out of my mouth right now that I'm like, I like that one, I like that one, I like that one. The one that keeps coming to my mind is when they do the all-night dancing contest.
Oh, yeah.
And they have, they clearly have a stunt double doing
I know,
White's
we love
business.
that stunt double with her front walkovers and splits.
Yes, but it's hilarious because they're all trying to, outdo each other and Rose.
She says something like, oh, better stand back, I don't want you to get hurt.
Yes.
Before she starts.
Oh my goodness.
I think some of my favorite one-liners that Dorothy had is when Stan invites Dorothy to a hotel room to explain that she broke up, his young little thing broke up with him, and I love how Dorothy goes out with him just to make fun of him the whole entire time that this young beautiful girl has left her, and then they wind up hooking up. And she's like, maybe it's just me. I just think it's funny that she left him, and that Dorothy literally enjoyed every single moment of that.
We have not talked about Stan, and he was a recurring character for especially in the last few seasons.
Hi, it's me, Stan. Every time I was going to say that.
And they all have different retorts they get more sassy as the series progresses, even Rose. Yes, you big lug.
So many great episodes he's featured in. One of the ones that comes to mind, I don't think it's the same episode you were talking about, Eddie, but he's spending the night and he says something like, where should I sleep? And she says, on the floor like any dog.
Yep.
And then he gets down there and he starts laughing and she goes, if you're doing what I think you're doing, you're in big trouble. God. But he actually, speaking of passing away, 3 out of the 4, he died very shortly after the show ended.
He did.
Just like 2 or 3 years later.
He did. Actually, Estelle was the first to go and died, not right after that show, but after The Golden Palace was finished. She also appeared in Empty Nest and Nurses.
But she wasn't, I think it's worth noting, she wasn't that much older if not.
She was the second youngest. She was the second youngest to Rue McClanahan.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that's why in flashbacks she was able to play herself.
Mm-hmm. She also got a facelift in going into season 2, I think. They were like, what are you doing? Hello? You have to work harder to make you look older.
I never heard about that.
She did. She got a facelift. I think going into season 2, she came back looking younger.
She was sick of people thinking she was older than she was.
Right.
And the show was like, that's what we were, that's the point.
She also was notoriously unnerved by the process of shooting TV, and her lines had to be on cue cards because she worked herself up into kind of a stage fright for the cameras. And
she was used to long rehearsal
periods, and also was awestruck too by her co-stars, who she was very good friends with. Everyone got along with Estelle, so there's a lot of, if you like a YouTube wormhole, if you haven't moved on completely to TikTok and you watch videos of more standard length, sorry if that sounded grumpy and old. There are these archives from the American Television Academy or something like that, Archives of American Television, something like that, where they have interviews with Rue McClanahan and some older ones with Betty White and Estelle Getty and even B. Arthur, although not too many with her. And they just talk about, they're interviewed individually, but they talk about the show. You can learn a lot of tidbits. And like Rue and Betty, who were very good friends, very close because of their prior work and just throughout this show, would leave notes to each other on the refrigerator under one of the magnets. So each time they'd go in for the cheesecake or whatever they were digging out of the refrigerator, there would be a note for the other one.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh, that's so sweet.
This show needs a documentary about it. Just, there's
totally
enough of substance that I think more people should know about.
Absolutely. I agree. I'd totally watch that. Absolutely.
I also have to say I had to look up, was it Blanche's brother's name Clayton?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He is still alive and working. I recognize him now, but Richard had me want to see who this person was.
Good! Sir, if you're listening to this, please tweet at us, CPU Podcast. We'd love to talk to you about your time on the Golden Girls playing Clayton Devereaux. Yes.
And that one episode
of Deep
Devereaux. Space Nine.
What's her... What? Deep Space Nine?
He's in one episode.
Is he a Ferengi?
Good job, Richard!
Wow. That's awesome.
He just betrayed some nerdiness.
I used to love Star Trek.
I believe he's the guy who crashes the pleasure planet Risa and says people shouldn't be having fun. So he's easily hateable.
Oh.
No matter what show he's on. No, I think that character, I don't know if you were supposed to fall in love with that character or not. I really don't. I feel like aside from the content matter, he didn't have enough. I don't think there was enough written for you to really fall in love with him or hate him. He was just very, very neutral.
I didn't fall in love with him, but I didn't hate him either. Yeah, you're right. He was just there for an episode. And even the stuff about him being gay, Blanche doesn't get that at first. It takes her a while to put 2 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. So that whole business about
doesn't he pretend to have slept with Rose to cover it up.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does.
You know, I just thought of another example of topical things that they tackled. Dorothy's brother.
I was actually going to mention
that
him.
is
Phil.
that is a heart-wrenching episode.
That is such a great. It's also, I mean, like, there are some things. I mean, talking about standing the test of time, there are some things now, some jokes that are made in some of those episodes that probably wouldn't pass or fly now because sensitivity. But they're still funny. But what I think what's really beautiful, what was really great for, I mean, I guess for those, obviously, you don't know, he was a transvestite, a cross-dresser, but was married to a woman, and they had children, and that was the thing, and he passes away, and there's an episode devoted entirely to his funeral, and what Sophia's reaction is, and we learn towards the end of that episode why she's never liked his wife. She never liked his wife, and she makes some excuse that she never got the dowry that she was promised, and it was like $40 or something stupid. But then Rose, out of nowhere, because she was a grief counselor, was like, hey, I did this for years. That's not what you're really upset about. What is it that you're really upset about? And you learn that Sophia blamed his wife for not, like, why didn't you make him stop? And then blamed herself as a mother. And it was another one of those beautiful, touching moments. And then his wife, or now widow, says, he was a good man. That's why.
Provided for his family.
Provided for his family. He's a great father. He was a good man. And it's such a beautiful moment. In that very same episode, they go from really high comedy into this really touching, beautiful moment, and the whole episode wraps up. I think that's a really great.
And I distinctly remember when Sophia breaks down and she says, "My baby's gone."
My baby's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
That always gets me every time. I don't care how many times I watch it. Just the way she says it and the look on her face, and just I think we've all been through something like that. As far as grief goes, losing someone so important to us. And I think that's why the show is so relatable, is it does deal with these universal things that pretty much everybody's been through. We've all experienced loss and we've all experienced grief and things like that. And so I think that's a big part of it, of why it's lasted so long and why it continues to attract younger people to it, because I think even though they're, like your nephew, Eddie, maybe he's younger, but he can still, to a certain extent at least, relate to some of those themes and those issues, for sure.
I just thought of when they flash back to Brooklyn and the younger days of Dorothy and Sophia, and now I can't remember Sophia's husband's name.
Sal.
Yeah, all of those, and when Sophia... Estelle Getty doesn't have to wear the age makeup. She can just be in her own self. And then when B. Arthur plays her mother, Sophia's mother, I just enjoy those flashbacks as well.
And I enjoy the actress that plays the young Dorothy is dead on. I mean, It's not just the look, but the way she stands, the voice, the intonation, and the line deliveries. I mean, she has it down. Those are always enjoyable flashbacks.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the series finale, because that's what we do in a looking back. In the series finale for the Golden Girls, there's basically, what it leads to is Dorothy gets married. She meets Leslie Nielsen, and it's all a funny haha. They pretend to love each other. That it's Blanche's uncle. And they're basically in the two-parter. They're trying to get one over on Blanche by pretending that they love each other and doing this whole rigmarole. And it turns out that they fall madly head over heels for each other. They're perfect for each other. They're going to get married. And there's talk of selling the house, but ultimately Sophia stays with the girls. Blanche and Rose decide not to leave, but Dorothy does go. It's kind of the bridge because they knew they were making the Golden Palace. But B. Arthur was done. She was not going to play Dorothy Zbornak anymore. She was, I'm done. That's why the show ended. B. Arthur was done. She was not going to keep going. What do you think about the series finale? Was it a proper send-off for the characters at the time?
I think it was. I mean, it gets me every time. Every time, I mean, I see it. Like, you know what's coming. You know what the ending is. When when Dorothy's monologue, that you are all my family always. And when she leaves and then comes back and then leaves and then comes back. And then when she finally doesn't, just like sort of the devastation they feel when they realize, oh, she's really gone. She's really not coming back. I loved it. I think it's a great send off. Yeah, I mean, I think it gets me every time. I absolutely love it.
I agree, and you even get Stanley gets to say goodbye. You get that moment.
Yeah, isn't he her limo driver?
He is.
Yeah.
Everyone feels the same.
Kind of. I like it. I agree with you guys. I think the end part where she comes in and leaves, and then finally it's gone. It's just so sweet. And then they come together, and it's like it almost feels like they're genuinely like sad they're not going to be together anymore. As
Yes. Yes.
But just to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm cynical, but it just felt really rushed to me. Like the first episode, you meet him and 3 days later, like this is happening, and like it just felt a little rushed. Like I just felt like it would have made more sense for me, and I don't know if anybody agrees, but I feel like if they knew the series was going to end, they should have introduced Lucas earlier and kind of made it a little more gradual instead of like bam, bam, bam. It just felt a little bit, maybe just a tad bit rushed, but I do love it. And I think they do it beautifully.
See, I disagree slightly because that's the joke. Dorothy, who cannot get a man the entire series, meets this guy who, for all intents and purposes, she's not supposed to fall in love with and would not normally have rushed into anything, because the joke is the only thing she's ever rushed into was the shotgun wedding with Stan, which shackled her until he cheated on her and they divorced. That she ends up marrying this guy so quickly. I think that's the joke, and to me it's kind of it's one of those beautiful poetic pieces that come out of the show's long-running comedy.
That's true. That's true.
I think it's a proper send-off. Yeah, I mean, in some ways I wish it didn't end with sort of those happy tears, because there's sad tears in there too, but I think the story for the finale was kind of perfect.
I like how they made him related to Blanche, because maybe it's just me, but in my mind I'm like, they'll still get together for cheesecake because that's her uncle. Like, they're all, and I mean her mom, and then Rose will just somehow show up. Like, that's just Rose's fashion. She'll just show up. But
B. Arthur's in B. Arthur's in 2 episodes of the Golden Palace, so they all hang out again.
There you go. And
The
also,
Palace is all on YouTube, by the way, or at least it used to be.
Okay.
So if anyone is interested, that's how we watched it. I don't know if all of it is, but many, 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 many episodes are full episodes.
Yeah, it's just one season.
Also, he's played by Leslie Nielsen, who has been in so many wonderful and legendary comedies, including Airplane, Don't Call Me Shirley.
It's really funny you mention that, because now that I've watched the Golden Girls all the way through, I'll watch other shows from that time period. I'll be like, hey, there's Stan, or hey, there's so-and-so. It's just crazy how you just see them everywhere once you watch the show. Like, they were just popping up everywhere. It's really funny to me.
I do that too. You know what else I noticed, or that we noticed, is that, which obviously they hope you don't notice, but they doubled people a lot. So they would bring somebody on as like a random bit part.
Well, Big Daddy changed.
Yeah, Big Daddy changed, but like some actress was cast as like Sophia's whatever, and then like later on they come back and they're playing a completely different part because they changed a wig and different makeup, and it's like theater suddenly. Like, we're all supposed to like not notice it's the same. But
exactly. That's one of the things that I found interesting too about the show. Like, I remember the guy that played Miles. He's in a really early episode, and I was like, so then he comes back as a totally different guy, and okay, I'll go with that. Like,
sure.
But sort of the plausible explanation was that he was in witness protection.
I was just gonna say that, but the cheese man. It's all the cheese man's fault.
It is so hard to think about TV retroactively. A show that was on for 7 seasons without reruns, like they weren't thinking about that.
And you were watching
remember this person from 2 years ago.
Right, you were watching it week to week. There was no streaming in the 80s. There was barely enough cable in the 80s.
Hence the clip shows.
Right, back in the day when I walked 2 miles to school barefoot in the snow, we didn't have these fancy things like streaming. We watched it week to week at the TV because you had no other choice. Unless you were rich enough to have a VCR, and even then you watched it after.
Totally. It blows my mind how we have a generation of children now, like, they don't know that world. Like, everything is streaming, or, you can... On demand, or you can DVR and fast forward the commercials. Like, they don't have to watch like, it's just crazy, because I remember life before all that.
They're not watching these shows. They're watching stupid YouTube videos of people watching shows.
They're watching TikToks of YouTube people watching shows. They're watching TikToks. They can't even last through a YouTube video. They must get it in 1 minute increments. I have strong, passionate feelings about TikTok. Okay, so we all agreed that Golden Girls basically holds up, right?
Yes, it does. There's only a few things. I mean, it does. The only thing I think that does not is the very specific product mentions, or like pop cult, like maybe a politician at the time, or like something that was very, very like right at that moment happening in real life that they wrote in. And some of them are kind of obscure. So unless you were actually living life at that time, now when you look back at it, you kind of go, I don't know who that is. But that happens so infrequently that that's like the only thing I can say that doesn't. But
that just makes you feel like you're listening to your grandparents talk anyway. I don't know who that is.
Right, yeah.
There were two references.
Remember the grandma show.
Yeah, there were two references to Donald Trump, and all I could think of was that was when people didn't hate him quite as much. Oh, sorry if you like him. I'm the listening people. Okay.
You don't have to apologize.
That's right. So was 7 seasons the perfect amount? Would you have watched more if they had made it? Was it time for it to go, or should they have stopped sooner?
Oh, I'd have watched more. I think they could have gone on several more seasons. They just had to keep thinking up different situations.
Yeah, because it wasn't a continuing story like, a lot of the episodic, like, there's not character development where they have to go somewhere and have a beginning and an end. It was so situational in the true sense of the word. I think it could have went on.
Absolutely.
Not changing the writers, keep everything on that same kind of formula. And I would have continued watching, absolutely.
I would have continued too.
I would have continued as well. That's why I think what makes the show so good is Nick has brought it up, is that you can literally be scrolling through the TV, like, channels, and Golden Girls is on, and you're like, oh, this is like episode 10 of like season 7, and you can just watch the whole thing, and it's great TV.
Yeah, I love it when I flip through and I land on one and I'm like, oh, this is the one where Rose does this, or this is the one where Blanche says this, or, oh, I love this episode because XYZ happens. Like,
I've secretly wanted to, and I'm sure it's crossed everyone's mind, even though you may have seen the whole series multiple times and can finish sentences and all of that, I always secretly want to run into an episode I haven't seen. And it's impossible. I know it's impossible because I've seen them all and I own the DVDs and blah, blah, blah. But you just have that, like, oh, I wish there was another, something new. I mean, I would live for it. I would get so excited.
Yes.
But
oh, me too.
Alas, no.
I would have watched more. I thought they were firing on all cylinders in those last couple of seasons. And I really think it was just actress fatigue with Madame Arthur, and they could have gone on, but 7 was kind of the magic number back in the day, unless you happen to be a Cheers. That's a whole other podcast, which we're going to do. But the whole thing about it is, I think they ended on their terms, which I think is a good thing to do, and but I would have watched more, and I also wish there was more, but we can never have more because only Betty White still exists in the life.
Knock on wood.
Oh my gosh, that's such a national treasure. I mean, would be devastated. Just devastated.
Me
just
too.
Devastated.
Oh, I just love her so much.
Did you have any favorite guest stars? We've barely mentioned the guest stars, and there were a ton.
Mario Lopez. Ooh.
Oh, that's right. Pre-AC Slater.
I know.
I love when a young George Clooney pops up in the Cops episode of course, it's before he became, this big
post facts of life, pre-ER.
Exactly. And I think he does such a great job, and it's fun to see some of the people that went on to be, big stars. You kind of see where they started. I think it's kind of cool.
They even had big stars on this show that were big at that time, like Burt Reynolds was.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Mickey Rooney was on this show. Like, they were big at that time, and they were on this show.
Speaking of the Burt Reynolds episode, which is
love that episode.
The hilarious line where he goes, "Which one's the slut?" Oh my god! Just
love that
hilarious.
part. I love that part too. It's so funny. And then what always strikes me too about that scene is when he's standing there and then Estelle Getty is standing next to him and she's such a short little thing and he's so tall and like you just see the contrast. It's just so cute. It's just so funny. I love it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other guest stars because there was a lot.
There's so many.
That's a lot.
No, we're all drunk.
7 seasons,
There's
lots of
so
episodes.
many that our minds are just, we can't even think of them all. That's what's happening.
Where does the Golden Girls rank among your personal favorite series? And you can qualify that however you like.
I'll just say this, in this discussion and looking back at this show, I don't think I give this show enough credit for my own personal sense of humor. I think trying to aspire to the wit of Dorothy and even Sophia and those comebacks, I think that's a part of who I am from watching this show. So it ranks pretty high up there. I don't know where I would put it on my list, but it is one of the best sitcoms that's ever been made, really. It took that formula and just polished it and just held it up to like this level of excellence that it didn't really waver from for 7 years.
In sitcoms, it's probably in my top 5.
Well, I was at the beginning when you were giving some of those statistics about where it's ranked. I actually was really shocked that it was, I mean, the fact that it was in the list at all is fantastic. But when you said, 48 and 99 or whatever they were, I was like, that seems awfully low because not only is it so beloved, but I don't think it's ever been off the air. I mean, it has such a cult following and the writing is just so top notch. They seem low. I would say for me, it's top 5 too. The only thing that I would say is I've probably watched the entire series more than any other show. I can finish lines in that more than any other show. So it isn't usually my go-to anymore just because it's kind of like when you hear the same song on the radio a million times. But if it's I want something feel good, it's one of the very few shows that I'm purposely turning on. But, watching through the whole series, I do that with shows every, year or two where you watch through the whole thing. I don't do that with the Golden Girls anymore just because a million times,
And I just want to emphasize top 5 comedies, because if I was going into all of my TV shows, it probably still top 15, top 20 for me. But if you're factoring in things like, the X-Files and Buffy and a few other notable favorites, I don't know if I could have the Golden Girls beat it. But I'm thinking, of all the comedies, there is a handful that I return to. The Golden Girls is one of them. Friends is one of them. The Office is one of them. 30 Rock is one of them. Frasier is one of them. Also The Good Place I would add to that list. There's a handful of these that I would just keep coming back to because they're so good, and the Golden Girls is one of them. It's never not funny. I watched this, I've seen some of these episodes repeatedly as well, and couldn't talk through with some of the words. And there are literally...
You still
laugh. Bust out laughing. Gut laughing. It's that funny. Especially for me, Dorothy and Sophia, because I just love them so much.
For me, it would be in top 5 as well, top 5 comedies. It's probably, I would say for me, it's probably number 2 on my list. I said that earlier. I think Seinfeld for me is number 1. Number 2 is Golden Girls. Well, now we have Schitt's Creek, but we're talking old school stuff.
Yeah, Schitt's Creek's got a factor in there now.
Sophia and Dorothy, one of my favorite zingers, and it's so horrible that Sophia says to Dorothy, I don't remember what the context is, but Sophia says to Dorothy, jealousy is an ugly thing, and so are you, anything backless. And
I love that line.
So brutal, but oh god, it makes me laugh every single, because it's the perfect amount of beats in between. She takes 2 steps and just looks back over her shoulder and says it, and then turns and walks out of the room. It's perfect.
I would have to say that Golden Girls is probably in my top 3 favorite shows. I'm with you, Kylie. If I was comparing it to all my shows, I mean, ER is my favorite show of all time and still is. However, I do have to say this is probably the only show that I still revisit and will just watch randomly whenever. By the way, we forgot Debbie Reynolds was.
Yes!
Sorry. I just thought of that. She almost replaced Dorothy. as a roommate.
She did. That was a
So.
really good episode. I love me some
Very
Debbie
good
Reynolds.
Me too. So, had to say that.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely in my top 5 as well. It's just such a comfort, and it's funny because I'll sit down on Sundays sometimes because my husband teaches at religious school. Most Sunday afternoons I have kind of to myself, and so I'll be like, oh, I sit down intending to watch something else, but then I flip on the TV. I'm like, oh, the Golden Girls is on. Of course I'm gonna watch this. Like, it's just such a comforting thing, and it's just something that I go back to again and again. And it just makes me feel so good every time. And it's like you guys are saying, I can quote the lines. And, like, I love all the zingers and everything. And, yeah, I think it's probably one of the only shows that I do that with. As far as, like, going back to it over and over and over again. Because, yeah, I could watch them all day.
So we know that I've said numerous times that I compare myself, and nobody's argued with it, which I'm not sure how to take it, that I'm very much a mix of Dorothy and Sophia. And we know that Jordan sees Dorothy in himself, and we know that Leslie sees Rose in herself, which I think is very accurate. Did the rest of you answer that question?
Okay, so because I'm in a loving relationship.
Nope. No.
We know where this is going.
No. You can't. That is like some months compared to the rest of your life. I'm just saying. Oh, that's the Dorothy come out. I said that with affection.
I called out.
No, I did not.
I would definitely identify with Blanche.
Okay.
Don't be ashamed.
Don't be ashamed.
I know, I'm not. But I have to say, to defend myself, I think it's because of her. I like how she carries herself. I've always loved the finer things in life, and I'm not afraid to work for the finer things in life.
That's what I meant.
Sure it is. Sure. That's so Dorothy.
I love you.
But yes, I definitely identify with Blanche out of all of them. I wish I could be a Rose sometimes, though. I just wish.
Simpleton.
Just simple. It just doesn't work.
Nick, Richard.
Okay, so I don't know. I took the this was years ago. I think it was a MySpace thing, but took the which Golden Girl are you quiz, and I thought sure I would be Dorothy, but I was Blanche, and I don't know 100% where that comes from, but I do like kind of, for example, lying about her age. Maybe that was a question. I want to be forever young. Just got Botox. I didn't maybe have that back then, but like, you know, I feel like that's one of the traits that I share in common with her. I do not think so highly of myself, but I might carry myself that way, and maybe that's something that she's had a couple of moments like that where she's honest with herself or her friends or whatever, and kind of shows that there's a facade. But I guess I see a little bit of her in myself at times.
You just like the finer things in life.
Yeah, that's what you gotta say.
I don't like sequins like Jordan likes sequins, and she wears an awful lot of sequins.
That was necessary
I
roughness.
was gonna say, speaking of sequins, can we talk about, like, seriously talk about some of the fabulous outfits that they have on the show? Because some of those outfits are banging, like, so cute.
For the time.
From the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of shoulder pads, so I don't know if I could say banging.
A lot of shoulder pads.
A lot of shoulder. What I enjoy, what I think is more timeless, is some of the accessories they have. Like, I like to notice the jewelry that is on Blanche or on Dorothy at times. Not so much Rose. She doesn't wear as much jewelry. Sometimes she wears a necklace or something, but... Yeah. Also, I noticed that Jordan didn't argue with Richard at all.
His character description?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I could see that.
He's totally going to call me Dorothy, though.
No, I would call you a blend of Blanche and Rose.
Oh.
Ooh, I could so see that.
Right. I like how everyone's face looked like appalled or shocked. What was that? Because no, you said it earlier. I'm not.
No,
because he can be gullible at times.
I wasn't shocked.
Not him, but gullible at times. Sometimes it's very easy to. Someone's making a joke, he doesn't realize they're making a joke, for example, or something like that.
I was agreeing with
all.
you. I wasn't shocked.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked. I was thinking about the spot onedness of the accuracy of it, is what I was thinking of. I think that's
true.
true.
Conversations with Richard while doing a show with him, actually talking, and he's like, I have no clue what you're talking about. But he still stayed engaged in the conversation the whole entire time.
I hope not.
Nick.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I mean that with love.
Yeah.
Right.
Affection, I tell you. Nick, are you trying to avoid the question, sir?
What? Everyone's talking at the same time. I would definitely lean towards Dorothy, I think. Yeah.
Are you sure you're not Sophia?
I struggle with the difference there. They kind of have that...
They do.
Distill them down to that...
Dorothy has finesse. Sophia is a blunt instrument. They both have the zingers, but Sophia just goes for it. No, there's nothing stopping her. Dorothy,
I definitely hold back.
You hold back, so I don't think you're a Sophia. I'm a half of a Sophia because I do both of those things.
This is true.
I feel like once someone's your friend, Kylie, you turn into a Sophia.
I mean...
I mean that with love.
No, with affection. No, you're probably right. There's no need for me to be finessed.
Okay, but let's not forget that Dorothy was the intellectual one that knew seemingly everything, like the Jeopardy episode, that she was too good to be on the show.
I would never
Kylie
do
has
that.
the biggest vocabulary of anyone I know. She knows the history, the pop culture, the politics, the mathematics.
But for the record, I would never think I'm smarter than Jeopardy, okay? I just would not.
Although, didn't you say you wanted to go on it once, or did I tell you should go on it?
The second one.
Oh, okay, fine.
Because that doesn't sound like fun to me, actually.
Oh, okay.
But it's all right. I mean, unless I won money, Nick. Don't judge me. So now I'm going to
I was
ask...
just going to say, Jeopardy has so much more to do with your timing than... Obviously, you have to know the information to back it, but all the strategy stuff is you just have to buzz in and hope you know it. You don't buzz in when you think you know it.
I know. And then that trick of remembering to pose the answer in the form of a question. Mm-hmm. I would get caught up on that, I think, because I'd be like, stuff is happening. Yes, Merv Griffin. So now I have to ask the magical question that ends all of our podcast episodes, but especially our looking backs, because we're talking about a whole show out there. Would you recommend the Golden Girls to others? Why or why not?
Yeah, it's funny.
And if you haven't seen it, I want to know where you've been living.
Probably on TikTok.
Ooh. No,
full circle.
On TikTok and Dorothy, there's so much Golden Girls. Yeah, no, they've seen it if they're on TikTok. There's a whole Golden Girls like TikTok you can follow.
Ooh.
Everybody's trying to get on the TikTok.
Not me, probably not me. I not only would recommend it, I do recommend it, and it is crazy, like you said, Eddie, where have you been? That it comes up, and they've never watched it, and it's immediately, where have you been? And you must watch it. I can't think of, aside from some of the offensive things that have not held up with current culture, how can you not laugh at that show? I mean, it's just so funny. It is sometimes some of the humor, some shows, the humor can be lost on certain people because it's a very distinct type of humor. But I think that this is the kind of humor that everybody can appreciate. So I would always recommend it.
Oh, me too. I love it because it is hilarious. And I was even shocked because my husband, he's kind of a comedy, I don't want to say snob, but like he's very picky about comedy and things he thinks are funny. And we've watched some episodes together and he's even laughed and been like, okay, yeah, that's funny. Like, I just love it that it's so biting, it's so funny, it's still so relevant, and it brings people together in a really unique way that I think you don't see anymore. I always recommend it, and yeah, if you haven't watched it, get on it, because
I love how you say that it brings people together, and I actually forgot about this, but my partner's, his parents are from the Philippines, and they actually learned English watching the Golden Girls.
Oh!
Nice! I love it.
So they actually still watch the Golden Girls like all the time, and that's actually the first show I actually watched with them when I met them was the Golden Girls, and we all laughed.
That's
Addie, I think you should describe your show and tell that you showed us earlier.
Oh, yeah. So, my fan.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Thank you, guys. It's my Golden Girls fan that says "Stay Golden" all the time. So, yes.
We have T-shirts that are the same. Or not, it says "Stay Golden."
But the funny thing is we got them as gifts, and 2 different people got them for us because they both knew how much we love the Golden Girls. So we both got them.
This was also a gift from when I worked COVID in New York. The unit that I worked on, they gave me that fan.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah, that's amazing.
Awesome.
My sister gave me the t-shirt that says, whatever, I don't remember the order, think like Dorothy, laugh like whomever.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Love like Blanche, whatever, live like Sophia, whatever it is. I have that t-shirt from my sister, so that's
I
nice.
have the wine glass.
There's a lot of things with those sayings on it that I'll not get right unless I'm looking at it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I would also recommend the Golden Girl. I mean, I don't know many people who haven't seen it. If you are one of the few of the 7 billion people on this planet that have not seen the Golden Girls, you should hide the unto Hulu or whatever you like to get your streaming on, or I'm sure the DVDs are cheap on Amazon, and watch the Golden Girls because they're really, really funny. And yes, they come from a decade past with some humor that comes from then, but contextually, it does age better than other comedies of the era, and I think it's worth it.
And I think it ages better than some closer to modern. Like, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan, but I think Seinfeld could get really specific about episodes and what was happening in that time, whereas I feel like Golden Girls kind of has a little bit more timelessness to it.
I agree.
I
I
agree.
agree.
There you are.
How does anybody, I know that this is kind of the wrap up, but there's a quote that I wanted to mention because it's one of my favorite lines. I don't know if maybe we want to all say one of our favorite lines, but one of my favorite lines is the Christmas episode where they're giving gifts and Dorothy opens the gift from Rose and it's some sort of like weird pipe looking thing. And she's like, what is this? And she says, it's a maple spigot. She says, well, thank you. This will come in really handy when I'm lost in the woods with a stack of pancakes. Oh my God. I love that line so much.
So much. My favorite is when Blanche walks in the door and she's really mad and she looks at, I think it's Dorothy, and she says, oh, hi, Blanche. And she's like, eat dirt and die, trash. The way she says it, the fact that she's like throwing her keys in her purse, like she's just so fed up. It's great. I love it.
That is such a good one. And she says hi so friendly and happy. It's just like heartbreaking and funny at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so many lines from the show, but I think my favorite one is from Blanche, of course. And she says that crying is for plain women, pretty women go shopping. Which is
Oh my God.
Which is like my motto. Like when I feel down, I go shopping. So,
Retail therapy.
Right, yeah.
I can't think of a single favorite line because
I know.
if I were to pick all my favorite insults, it would be from Dorothy or Sophia because their deliveries are same but different. And I can't think of one that just rings forward because I laugh at all of them.
Yeah, I think the one I would pick is that limerick line that I already talked about because it really does just, she almost throws it away. It's just so perfectly delivered and dirty.
God, I wish I could think of a single line. Now I'm going to rack my brain. Jordan, did you give a line?
Yeah, I gave like 3.
You did.
So now I feel like I don't know. There's just so many to choose from. There's that one where they're dressed. Dorothy is asking for advice. She's getting ready for a date. And she says, which do you think looks better, the pearls or the whatever it is?
Gold chain.
The chain.
Mm-hmm.
And both Rose and Blanche are giving simultaneous advice. And it's so hurtful. And I think what makes it so funny is that like, for like once out of nowhere, Rose is involved in throwing insults, and that usually doesn't happen. So it makes it so funny where she's like, well, don't you think the pearls are better? Well, if you were paying attention, you would notice that they draw attention to that ostrich-like neck. But what about this? Well, no, that draws attention to her manly, broad shoulder. Like it just goes back and forth and back.
I have a Rose quote right here that fits that description. she says to Blanche, I thought you wore too much makeup and were a slut. I was wrong. You don't wear too much makeup.
I had to Google because there's so many, but I love this one. It's Dorothy. I have a date, Blanche, with a man, Dorothy. No Blanche with a Venus flytrap.
It would be no Blanche with a Venus flytrap.
Venus flytrap.
I have one more, and it's not an insult, but it's one of the very few that's not an insult that I always just die laughing is when they're dressed as nuns from some play, and the priest comes in, and Blanche drops, "Oh, Jesus!" And then she says, "Please forgive us in this our hour of need."
And then she's got the underwear and she's like, we're collecting lingerie for needy, sexy people.
Exactly. That whole, oh my God, it's the best. Needy, sexy people. It's just...
Wasn't the play, wasn't the musical, wasn't it a musical? Wasn't it Sound
Yeah,
of
they were
Sound of
doing rehearsal for Sound of Music.
Sound of Music, okay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Timely.
my only other favorite one is when Dorothy is leaving to go confront Stan, and she says, Rose says, where are you going? She goes, to get ice cream or commit a felony. I'll decide in the car.
Yep.
Such a biter. I love it. So good. So good.
At this point, is there anything else that you want to say that you haven't already said, either lovingly or otherwise, about the Golden Girls?
No, but can we sing the theme song?
I'm for it. Who wants to?
I mean, not as a soloist, but...
I'll sing it
Somebody
with
just
you.
text Eddie.
Oh my God, yeah.
I muted my phone.
We can sing the theme song. If you were serious. Nick, you don't have to sing loud if you don't want to.
I'll sing, but I'll...
Oh my God.
That's a terrible joke, and don't use your Zoom for that.
Are we doing it?
If you want to. Thank you
Okay.
for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Your
Oh,
heart
this is terrible, you guys.
It's hard to sing on Zoom.
Scratch that. Just get the recording and edit it in as the closing credits.
I don't have the rights, but I'll take it under advice.
Oh, right.
You know, singing we are actually, all of us have done theater at one point or another and have sang songs, so.
Yes, for real.
We'll just blame it on Zoom and latency. We'll just say that's the problem.
That's what
There we
happened.
go.
Just go with that.
Sounds like a plan. So I think because we managed not to sing the theme song very well, it's time to end the Golden Girls Looking Back podcast panel. So what I'd like to...
Low note.
What?
Well, all I have to say is I've had a great time and there wasn't a man involved.
Oh, come on, Blanche. Awesome.
Thank you.
Very well
Me
played.
too. Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you, Leslie and Nick and Richard and Jordan and Eddie, for joining me to look back at the Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. And you know what? It's time to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we had new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, The Golden Girls is available to stream on Hulu. If you have nominations for shows we should cover on our podcast, contact us via social media or email. You can volunteer to be a panelist too. In the meantime, and until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.